Hi, welcome everyone to Unity Live. We're so excited to have all of you here tonight with us.
Yes, thank you so much for joining. I'm Emily Ghosh Harris.
I'm Brooklyn Rain.
And we are so excited to have Dr. Rosie Kuhn with us today. Dr. Rosie Kuhn is the principal of the Paradigm Shifts Coaching Group, a boutique coaching firm which focuses on personal and spiritual development in oneself, in relationships, and in the workplace. She is considered a preeminent thought leader in the field of transformation. And Dr. Rosie is the author of 13 books, including Self-Empowerment 101 and I've Arrived, well, sort of. And she has been training individuals to become transformational coaches since 2001. Dr. Rosie, thank you so much for being here with all of us.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
And I just published my 14th book, ebook called Fierce Compassion. And it's actually part one of a training manual for people who are interested in being transformational coaches. So it's called Fierce Compassion, Becoming an Agent of Transformation. I think that's the name. So it's an ebook right now. It'll be in hard copy, I don't know, sometime probably 6 months from now, but we got the first part out. So Fierce Compassion.
Exciting.
So
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, congrats. We've been talking a lot about compassion recently. So how timely this book comes into humanity's reach.
Thank you.
Truly.
Yeah. Well, before we get kind of into asking more about, some of your books and certainly this one on compassion, we would love if you could share a little bit about your story and what's led you to this point, on your journey and all the fun breadcrumbs that and pivotal moments for you.
Well, there's been a lot, and the big thing right here is that I'm in my 70th year, which is just unbelievable. It doesn't register as that. So all of the things that have happened and have been pretty remarkable. And I actually wrote a book when I was, I guess, maybe almost 10 years ago called The Unholy Path of a Reluctant Adventurer. The Unholy Path of a Reluctant Adventurer. And I was writing about sort of how I got to that point in my life, which was about 15 years ago, not quite. But anyway, what I realized was everything that made the biggest difference in my life was when I followed a calling versus when I followed everybody else's path, the well-worn path. So in essence, I grew up in Detroit, one of 9. I was the 6th of 9 kids in a Catholic family. Lovely. My dad was a doctor, so we had a lovely life on the water on an island, not much different than this other than it was in Michigan. But it was pretty dysfunctional. And being the 6th, I came to decide quite early that I must be pretty insignificant and invisible. So I tried really, really hard to be beautiful and loving and generous and all of those things. And it didn't work. I mean, I was beautiful because I was beautiful, but in terms of all the working and trying hard, it caused a lot of suffering, just because that's generally what happens. So I got married very early because I thought if I got married and had kids, that would stabilize, and that's what you're supposed to do. So I married the right guy, but he wasn't the guy that I was in love with. That was the guy who was going to be the father of my children, kind of thing. So again, not a very good, happy marriage. So by the time I was 26, I decided it wasn't, I just needed to end the marriage. I had 2 wonderful, very young children, and it made sense because he had stability, he had the financial situation, he had the parents and everybody close, that if I went and got my degrees and took care of myself, I could get myself established, and then my kids would come live with me. So I was a non-custodial parent. That was in the 80s, which is pretty, even the late 70s, that was a big deal. Nobody liked that idea that I would do that. But I got a degree in marriage and family therapy, and became a marriage and family therapist after, and that's what happens a lot of times when people get divorced, is they go be therapists for other people. And I moved out to Nova Scotia where I worked in addictions. I worked for the province for about 8 years working in addictions. And it was just the best thing in the world. It was one of those things, like leaving my marriage and all of that stuff was important, but it was the calling to go and train with some people that were in interfaith. So it was like the beginning of this interfaith therapy kind of process, and went to California for most of the master's program, where there was this sort of influx of something bigger than just your traditional therapy. And that was a huge calling to do that. And then I got this calling to go live in Nova Scotia. I was like, what am I thinking, right? And so I went out there and I got a job inevitably for the province working in recovery. And that's when I started truly understanding the concept of who we are as a spiritual being, having a human experience. All 12-step programs are a spirit-based program, because it's the integration of who we are and how we need to surrender a lot of our ego stuff to something greater than ourselves. So that was the beginning of not only seeing the value of that in other people's lives. The people that were in recovery, they had a life that was better than mine. They had serenity. And that was what I realized, is they had serenity. I had this master's degree and this great job, but I didn't have that. So so then the next calling, and I'll try to keep this short, but the next calling was this man who came to Nova Scotia to build a 93-foot schooner sailboat. And I fell in love with the sailboat, and then I fell in love with the guy, left my job, left my home, and went sailing for 2 years across the Atlantic Ocean.
Awesome.
Had a transformational experience. And the relationship was pretty rocky, but in a sense, I realized that my relationship with the boat was why I was there. It's like you realize these things that are happening. So this is not about the relationship with the guy, it's the boat that I'm having a relationship with, and it's my teacher in a sense. Mm-hmm. So I had an extraordinary numinous experience out there in the middle of the ocean very quickly, but it was pretty life-changing. And then over time, the relationship with the man didn't go well. I left that, realized that I really wanted to focus on learning how to bring spirituality into therapy or something like that. Found a school out in California called the Institute of Transpersonal Psychology. And again, it was another big calling, because it was like, there's no way that I would do anything like that, to go to California from Nova Scotia. But it was a calling. And so I followed it and went there, and it was just an extraordinary learning experience on so many levels. So the transpersonal is, if for those of you that don't know about the transpersonal, in a sense, we think of ourselves as the physical, spiritual, emotional thing, but we don't take into consideration, generally speaking, all of the energy that we are, and all of the creativity that we are, all of the intuitions that we are, the insights, the relationships that we have with the cosmos, astrology, tarot, all of those, crystals, all of that energy stuff, the dreams, the non-ordinary experiences, all of those things that we don't think of as part of our human experience is part of the transpersonal. So I was so grateful to be led to this school and get my PhD in transpersonal psychology, focused on spiritual guidance. And that, so I had the therapy background, went into spiritual guidance, and then found coaching. And the coaching that the fellow I met was Hans Phillips, who's down in Santa Cruz. And he trained people. And when he talked about what he was doing, it was so in alignment with the transpersonal learning that I had, and the therapeutic foundations and the spiritual everything. And it's like, here we are at this point with people going forward. And in a sense, we have to start letting go of the past, letting go of the data of the past, and start to build a future and build a self from who we are in this moment versus in the past. So all of that was a calling. And even where I live now and have been living here since 2003, it was a calling to come live here. So I live on this island, and I live in a small, a tiny house, if you will, on about 10 acres of land, and it's quite wonderful. So
Sounds like it.
that's
Yeah.
the story.
Dreamy.
I love all the twists and turns, and
Yeah. I mean, what a profound path. And it was just so smooth and perfect. And I mean, we know what we mean by
Oh, yeah,
perfect,
really.
right? It's all divinely perfect. But yeah, that's amazing. What a wealth of and well-rounded journey of expression and experience. It really makes a whole lot of sense than all the things that have been the fruits of those experiences through your books, and now the one that you've brought forth to share, your 14th book on compassion. You mentioned, I think at the beginning, if I'm not mistaken, that it was within the last 15 years, really, is it that you felt like this really big sort of spiritual awakening? Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, actually in 2010, I was still living I was living part-time here and a little bit down in the Bay Area. And I had been running a training program at the Institute of Transpersonal Psychology, which is now Sophia University. I have to say that because a lot of people Google Institute of Transpersonal Psychology, they will find Sophia University. So I just have to say that. So I was teaching and training there, and then got this hit to stop training, and I thought that I was gonna be somebody like it was like time, again, it was like, okay, the trajectory, I'm gonna go off in this direction, it's gonna be great. And so I stopped training, and was just kind of came back up to the island, and it was waiting for the phone call, from Oprah or something was gonna happen. And it turned out that it was what one would call a dark night of the soul, which was what happened in the spiritual immersion podcast that you've been listening to, of what really happens when you're in the midst of, I don't know how to do life. I don't know how to do me. I don't know what life is about. I don't know anything, and I don't have the money, and I don't, everything's gone. And what do you do? And how do you do it? And all of that. So that started pretty much in 2010. I've had other what I call spiritual immersion processes. Other people call them spiritual emergence processes, or something else, dark nights, all kinds of things. But I call it spiritual immersion because we're taking ourselves, if we're conscious enough, I keep pointing at my head, but the consciousness, if we're conscious enough, we can start to choose to look at things differently and say, okay, who's already doing this? And I was a student of the Course in Miracles. I read a book called Oneness by Rasha. You guys had Paul Selig on. I'm a big fan of the guides. Like, they are just amazing. And so we have to look at, when your life is kind of going in a wacky way, or it just doesn't make sense, you have to look at who's doing what. Mm-hmm. If they're doing it and it's working for them, that's what I need to do. That's what I need to look at in terms of going, oh, it's impossible, and I suck. And again, my foundation of life was I was insignificant, invisible. Who would care about what I have to say? So I write my books for me, basically. This is one of the books called, oops, they disappear, don't they? With the background. This one's called, If Only My Mother Had Told Me, or maybe I wasn't listening. Why does it disappear? Or does that work?
Oh, there we go.
yeah, we see it now. That's awesome. And I love that there is a butterfly behind you, because for me, butterflies are really the ultimate symbol of transformation. And, it's like the butterfly eats and eats and eats. And then when it's finally ready, it goes into a cocoon and literally dissolves itself into nothing. And when you think about it, that is truly an act of great courage. And it's not easy to change and to transform. And so I love all that you're sharing about that process because, you talk about your upbringing in your childhood, and to reprogram and to overcome that is such a profound experience, and to be able to teach that to others is extraordinary. So I'd love to hear from you some of the key kind of components on your journey and some of the transformational tools that have been, the most helpful for you.
I think the starting with listen to your intuition would be one of the first. I did all of the things I was supposed to do up till the time I got married. I mean, and including that. And then when it got time to leave my marriage, I tried to leave 5 times. I'm saying it that way. I tried to leave 5 times, but because you're not supposed to leave your marriages and all that stuff, it didn't work. And then finally, at the sixth time, it was like, I need to do this. And it was so against everybody's thinking, but I needed to do it. I was really listening. And the choice of being a non-custodial mother was like crazy making for people, but I knew that was the right thing. So listening, even though it goes against, the consensus reality, is so important in this process. And even though there was, the stuff that happens in life, the circumstances that happen, even though all that was happening, I knew it was the right thing to do for my children. Now, they didn't necessarily agree with me, and I mean, they were very, very young, but it was like I knew I was doing the best thing for them. And in that, I was able to grow myself up and become a better person, a better mom, a better person to be a mom, and a better person to be in the world. So listening to your intuition, even though if it goes against what everybody else is saying, that's I think number one. That's I'm forgetting the book, the fellow that wrote the Road Less Traveled.
Yeah, great book.
Scott.
I'm horrible with names. You'll never get it out of me.
But the road less traveled is following your own path.
Bradshaw.
Yes. Thank you, Kayla. We can always count on you.
No, that's not the one I'm talking about.
Oh.
Bradshaw, thanks. That's another book. It doesn't matter. The Road Less Traveled was that guy, Scott Peck. Thank you. That's the one. Joseph Campbell says, if there's a path in front of you, it's not yours. It's somebody else's. Mm-hmm. Your path is built one step at a time by you being present in you, just being here now. And that's another huge point for me is, and has been such a big part of transformational coaching, and some people might know it as ontological coaching, is the languaging of our being. Ontology is the science of the languaging of our being. Now, we don't talk about our beings very much, and that we are actually always coming from that state of being. We're always acting from whatever state of being we are in. My dog, Gracie. And when we take into consideration, who am I being in this moment, then we get a better idea of the I amness, if you will, of life. I am now in this moment. In this rainstorm, I am anxious. I am angst. I'm panicking. I am, and being able to express and define those states of being is really, really important in terms of knowing who I am. And also another element is knowing the difference between when I am in a fear-based state and when I'm in an essence-based state. Now, all of us are always our essence self. We are always our essential nature. You guys are brilliant. You're radiant. Your beauty and your wisdom is here, and it's what draws people to you. You don't have to do anything to be that beauty, that wisdom, that connection, that engagement, the transparency that you guys talk about. That's your essence. Okay. And then it's like, well, what do I do? What do I do? And we're always wanting to do, as opposed to wait, just be in this moment and see what unfolds. So you're asking me questions. I don't know what you're going to ask me. So in this moment, I stay present and connected, and I go, okay, so what are the important elements of my life that's made it what it is? Oh, intuition, insight, states of being. When am I in fear? When am I in my true essential nature? And when I was in the darkest kind of places in my life, and it was like, I should go get a job, because I had quit my job, but I mean, not quit my job because I'm a coach, so that goes wherever I go. But it's like, I'm not making the money. I don't have the clients. I don't have this. I don't have that. And I should be doing this and I should be doing that. And was this voice that said, just go lay down outside. I've got this little rocking bench. Go lay down. I went out, I hunkered in, and it's like, don't get off the couch until you are inspired. Yeah, but who am I to get, I gotta go I gotta think about making money. I gotta go, like, who am I? Because I'm not retired, and all of this rationalizations and justifications in my mind. Like, when you're inspired, you can leave. You can leave. You have to come from inspiration and nothing else. So I watched the guilt. I watched the shame. I watched the rationalizations. I watched the judgments. Who do you think you are? I watched all that. I stayed on the couch. And then finally, I got this inspiration. It was like, I think I'll go feed the dog. So, no guilt, no fear, no judgments, no rationalizations, no this. I think I'll go feed the dog. It was a following my heart. Whoop, that was it. And that goes into the intuition, but it kind of feels different sometimes.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful example. It really speaks to surrender, which I feel like is, counterintuitive sometimes when you're like, I'm going to think my way out of it, or I'm going to do all the things I, should be doing at this point in time. And to your point is like really surrendering into how you're feeling and being and allowing. And that's where all the magic happens.
And being able to disconnect. Hey, Grace, you want to come say hi? You okay? Disconnect from the judgment and rationalizations and the linear and the elements of thinking and going, this stuff is what's creating my suffering. 99% of the time, it's true for me. And when I let go and be in this state of just following, stuff happens. Just all my books are written from that place. They're not written from a linear, logical place. They're just always sort of this download or in whatever that word, inspired kind of thing. It's not anything more than just an inspiration that comes through me, and I pay attention and I do that. It's the same with my, I like to be a painter. I like to be a painter. I like to paint pictures. So that's kind of what inspires me. And so that's a really, really important thing. And the courage to listen to your inspiration, the courage to be true to who am I being, or I ask as a coach all the time, what's the quality of the being? What's the quality of being you in this moment? Or quite often, and I'll share this with you and your audience, that the 4 main questions that I ask as a coach, and anybody that's wanting to be a coach, these are the 4 main ones for me anyway. The first one is, what do you want?
Good one.
And most people, if they go to a therapist or whatever, the coach doesn't, or the therapist doesn't ask that question.
Yeah.
They assume there's a problem and what you want is to fix the problem or the problem to go away. But if you say, what do you want? People go, well, I got this problem. And I go, so what do you want? Well, I got this problem. It's like, but what do you want? Well, I want the problem to go away. Okay. What would that be like for you? What would be the quality of being you without this problem? And they go, I don't know what you're talking about. It's like, well, let's think about it. If you have a problem, and if you want that problem to go away, let's imagine what that would be like. What's the quality of the experience of being you without this problem?
Yeah, brilliant.
I know.
It opens up so many doorways, like instantaneously. It's like, whoa, yeah.
Yeah.
What a deep dive. I love
You
that.
can
Yeah.
deep dive really fast, but it just keep it simple. Like it's not like we're going to go, if I was a therapist and I was a therapist, so I know kind of this, at least from my perspective, we're going to go on this deep dive and we're going to go to where it's the scariest. Okay. You're going to go, sayonara, right? But if I go, hey, what do you want? And they go, I want to live without the problem. And it's like, well, what would that be like to not have the problem? And they go, I feel peace. I feel joy. I feel connected. I feel engaged. I feel playful. I'm like, great. What
Yes.
needs to what needs to shift so that what's the obstacle in a sense? That's the second question. First question is, what do you want? I want the problem to go away. Number two, what's the obstacle to the problem going away?
Mm.
And most time people will say, well, it's them, or it's the money, it's the person, it's the whatever
Something
it is,
outside of me.
something outside. And it's like, okay, great. What needs to shift so the problem and the opposite, what needs to go so the obstacle goes away? And they'll say, well, I have to change my attitude, or I have to stop giving so much attention to A, B, and C. I have to stop. I have to, and they will start to list, here's what I need to do differently. No big deep dive, right? But just very clear conversation. What do you want? What's in the way? What needs to shift? And the fourth question is, what will you practice to
Mm.
make those shifts?
Mm.
Just
Perhaps the
simple.
hardest question.
Right. And that's, even listening to Paul Selig and all, and it's like I listen almost every night. I will listen to the Audible books, and the same thing over and over and over and over again. And I listen and I pray and I connect and I do all of that, and I'm still caught between the small self and the large self. It's a constant practice. And it's not as if in this point when I'm working with people that they have the ability and the capacity to manifest that new practice effortlessly, but they certainly can begin to see, here's what I want. And quite often that problem is part of my blah, blah, blah that keeps me from having a great life.
Mhm.
And maybe I'm scared of having a great life. So I want to keep the problems around.
Yeah, bingo. That's what we most often witness, right? It's the comfortability in the identification with that character, with that role, with that experience. It's become such a familiar friend that the thought of actually liberating ourselves beyond that is frightening. It's just, it's the unknown.
The unknown. Yeah.
That's right. So it takes practice to hit the comfort, hit the edge of your comfort zone and go, yeah, there's a nice guy, and he turns out to be exactly like the other last guy that you had, or the way that you be in relationships with the world. And it's like it takes so much commitment. It takes so much commitment to stay present to the practice. I really want peace and joy and creativity and love and happiness and fun and playful. Okay, right now I'm not feeling it. And I see Kayla says it's not easy to answer what do I, but yeah, it's not easy, and it's such a great exploration, and it takes so much courage to stay present with yourself and go, here's how I'm being right now in this moment, even though I want to run or I want to go back to doing the old, or I'm bored or whatever. It's like, how do we stay here? Quite often I've had people go, I don't know how to do me. This woman says, I hate me. I want to be somebody else, because then I would know what to do. And it's like, yeah, I totally get it. But that was a realization for me, how often we don't know how to do me.
Yeah. Well, as we've all experienced and you've shared of your childhood too. I mean, basically from the time we enter in, unless we were built a blueprint around having awakened beings as our parents, so much of all the programming is how to be not you, right? How to be something else, how to be boxed in and identified with these finite potentials, and and just navigating through trying to survive being accepted and and loved through
Yeah.
being something that is not your authentic self. So
Yeah.
add 40 years, 30 years of living that way or more, and then it's like, yeah, well, who am I?
What do I really want?
What do I really want?
Yeah.
And as every day that goes by or every year goes by, it's like you guys are in your 40s, 30s.
What are you?
Okay.
Yeah, 30s. Yeah, she's 30s, I'm 40s.
But it's like you're no longer who you were when you were a child. You're no longer who you were when you were an adolescent. I'm struggling with this reality that I am no longer in my 60s ish. It's like, who am I? who is this? And how am I supposed to do this? And I've written books on aging like a guru, and it's like, and I've done the podcast on
Yeah.
aging. It's like I haven't, and it's like, oh my God, this is something different. And I'm in this place where it's like all of a sudden all this data comes in about you're 70 and you're now supposed to do this and you're not supposed to do that. And even though I'm pretty conscious, this data is coming in and inundating me going, you can't do that. Like it's the programming, right?
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
so curious. Just as you said that, I was getting a download. And I'm so glad you just said that, because now I'm seeing on a quantum level how actually, the programmed, and, there's some sort of quantum technology that's dialed into, the actual linear age of our cell. And you're right. I just saw this whole expression of this entire matrices of each and every age and each and every decade, and how it communicates to you like a computer chip, and totally, yeah. Wow. What? That's a
That's
whole nother level of diabolical stuff that's happening here.
Profound.
My superwoman,
Pew, pew.
like how do you yeah, exactly. I have
What
a friend, Elizabeth. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was going to ask, and I love that you've created, different podcast series and so many different books, and really, like, when you're going through something, learning about it, discovering, exploring, it's like sharing the teachings that are coming forward, because it deepens for yourself, and then
Right.
also you're able to, share all of that wisdom. So I'd love to ask you what tips you have for aging like a guru.
Because obviously it's working.
Yes.
You look awesome.
Thank you. um, Stay curious, stay courageous, and again that intuition thing and being aware of this process. So I was going to mention, I work with a woman named Elizabeth Sabat who does energy clearings and all kinds of amazing things. She's great. And last week when I had a session with her, and she said, "Oh, we're starting to clear all this aging stuff." It's like there's huge amounts of aging stuff that's just coming through, right? The data on the microchip or whatever.
Mhm.
And it's like it's hard to stay clear of that because it's so pervasive, right? And last a couple of months ago in August, I went to I went horseback riding for 6 days up in the wilderness in Washington, and it was phenomenal, right? I was 69. Like it was great, and it didn't get sore, didn't hurt, didn't anything. And it's like I come home and I go, "Oh, you're now 70 almost. Like, you got to watch that. How can you, and all this stuff." It's like, shut up, shut up, shut up.
Yeah.
Because that's the path that we have to walk, is this clarity of there's nothing true about me. And in fact, this is one of the things about aging like a guru, is that if you look at people from the outside, they look old, but on the inside, they're like 25 or 39, or there's a young, vibrant being inside. And I have a friend who's 81, and she's so vibrant inside and articulate and intelligent and wise, but she looks like an old person and she walks like an old person. but inside, and this is a really important thing, is to never lose sight of that I'm me, no matter how old and what this looks like. There's a me inside that I have to acknowledge. And that's a lot where we get caught into the stories and the data of what is as an old person, and you lose yourself. And I think
Totally.
that happens a lot.
Yeah, I love that you're system busting this and that you're going to continue to share with everybody how to completely, override those programs like a boss.
It's a challenge. Yeah, thank you. But it's a challenge to stay present to who I am, as things change. As things
Yeah.
change, okay, I'm still here. David Hawkins talks a lot about
Love him.
book Healing and Recovery. He's like, okay, you could chop off your arms, you're still here. Chop off your legs, you're still here, right? Chop off your organs, you're still here. And it's like, okay, that's who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been an amazing experience to keep moving forward through that. And again, coming back to Paul Selig, and I'm reading, forget what the name of the book is, something about the unknown, but it's like he keeps saying there's this reality that we are so afraid to know, this place in the unknown that is so much more exquisite and so much more potentiality, and we're afraid to know that.
Yeah.
And we have to keep doing the work to stay open to, where am I shutting down, where am I closing it off, where's that old patterning, the old patterns, and the data, of the old hard drive.
Yeah.
Throw out, basically, or at least let go of.
Mhm.
It's true. Yeah. The guides were coming in for years, like over and over and over again, like, the mastery of the present moment, of the witnessing presence, like ad nauseum. And I was just like, wow, like, am I not getting this? Because like, every day, like, and I was like, all right, like keep recalibrating. And now I see, it was always divinely purposed and encouraged and necessary. But in this now moment, in this now time, when everything is ramping up even, more and more and more, and there's more downloading into the matrix and, chaos frequencies. That center point, that 0 point is how you're, to your point, where you're able to access that core essence of self, that eternal self, that eternal childlike, joy and curiosity and being. And so, yeah, it's remarkable how many different facets and avenues that you've explored and are bringing into the expression of and sharing of your mastery. And it's really inspiring.
Thank you. And the thing is that I would have chosen marriage and children, period. That's what I chose. But everything else that came in the book, The Unholy Path, at the end of the book, it's like, I go, here's where this is where what made the difference in my life. These were the things that were transformative for me. And I had a transformational experience on the boat. I didn't know that was going to happen, right? I'm a transformational coach, but I didn't know anything of that. And I didn't go to Nova Scotia to, I was just led there. I wasn't gonna, all of these things were parts of my life. That's why I called it the reluctant adventurer, because I just would have stayed home, joined the country club stuff, that's what I had intended. So the rest of it, it was just pure, come on.
Yeah, your oversoul and higher self were like, yeah, sorry, that's not your blueprint.
Exactly.
You've been there, you've done that before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I believe you have a book on stepping into the inner adventurer, which like really, some of the themes that we're talking about, which is really like, leaning into curiosity and, cultivating that spark for the unknown, is like really what we're talking about is all that remains, unseen that we can explore and lean into. But if somebody is out there listening that maybe feels uncomfortable, taking that leap of faith, what advice would you have?
So the way that we need to see this, and this was demonstrated to me by some guy um, in the Bay Area. I was giving a talk about some book I was doing and talking about the quantum leap, and he said, "Do you actually know what a quantum leap is?" And we're going, "Yeah." And he goes, "A quantum is the distance between 2 points. That's a quantum. Like I can't even make it small enough to make it a quantum. So a quantum leap, the leap of faith is from one thought to a next. It's not like I have to do this transformative thing. And I talk about this, and I mentioned the boot camp. I'm doing this, or have on YouTube, this inward bound boot camp for self-transformation, and talking about the incremental the necessity to see the incremental shifts of beliefs, or whatever it is. When it was raining so hard and I was in a state of anxiety, I put my earplugs in and to say, okay, no rain, because it's so distracting. And to choose, this is all it is to choose a different state of mind. But then it's the training the self to train to choose to train. That's all it is, the incremental choosing of one step at a time. When I'm feeling anxious today, I was feeling anxious, like I said, there's a lot of flooding and those kinds of things here, and it's like, okay, I'm taking the dog out for a walk, or whatever, to choose to not be in the state of angst and anxiety. I'm going to choose to do something else. That choosing is all there is. And when we don't know what to choose, I didn't know what to do yesterday in the midst of the rain. It's like, what do I want to do? I think I'll work on a book, or I think I'll work on my knitting, or I think I'll, call a friend. And it's like, I'm going to choose to do something different. That's all we're doing. If we make it any bigger than that, then we get scared. And that's the point where we're going, here's what I want. Here's what's in the way. Here's what I need to shift. And here's what I'll practice. And people go, oh, I'll practice letting that go. I'll practice surrendering that. It's like, so what are the stages and steps that you're going to practice to make that surrendering happen? It's like, oh, well, first of all, you got to notice when you're not surrendering. You got to notice when that fear comes up, because it's either fear or love, basically. You're in a state of fear, state of being in fear, then your actions come from that place. Okay, so you got to notice it. That's one of the big things.
Yeah.
Okay, is quantum leaps start with, okay, here I am, you are here. Okay, and it's not about this. It's about what's that incremental step. And I talk about this in terms of that caterpillar moving along, and at some point, like you say, it eats, and all of a sudden it's ready to come into this chrysalis where it becomes mush. But most of us aren't ready for the mush, and unless we're given either spiritually transformative experience, or a numinous experience, or a download, or whatever that says, boom, like I'm awakened, most of us have to do this incrementally. That's why I wrote this book, the book, I've Arrived. Well, sort of. That's why. Because at moments, I can't, I'm sorry. How do you do that? There it is.
Yeah.
I've arrived. Well, sort of. And then it's the underline, it's 101 discoveries and revelations stumbled upon while on the path, the sacred path to who knows where. Because that's what we're doing, is we arrive. Oh my God, I'm here. And then it's like, well, sort of. And then, but who knows where we're going? The sacred path, but who knows where we're going?
So true.
And so that's a really important, it is also, you can tell I laugh a lot about stuff, and I appreciated what the person just said in the chat, that these are all humorous, because it's too scary. It's to not laugh about it. really, it's just too scary. And we could get too serious, but then it's like, it just gets too hard. So
Yeah.
laughing and humor is a really, really important piece of that too, whether, regardless of what age you are. I think the transition of aging and aging like a guru, I mean, it's like divorcing like a guru, or I have parent like a guru, aging like a guru, diet like a guru. I think that's pretty much it. There's another one, I know there is. But that guru element is the willingness to think about who you are in not who you should be, or it's in this moment. What's the truth of me right now? And can I come to this place of no lack, that no fear? And that was a really a great training as well, as to say, okay, in this moment, I am here in this moment, and what's true in this moment. There's nothing missing. There's nothing lacking. I can be at peace in this moment. Yeah, but come back. In this moment, I'm in peace. Okay, that kind of thing. But it's that training to stay in the moment. Training, that's the leap of faith that we're working on. I'm okay in this moment. Can I trust I'm okay in this moment? I'm pretty scared about that. That's that leap of faith, but I'm going to do it anyway. Train myself in this moment. That's what meditation's all about, right? Is to let go of the world. Gangaji talks about the practice of to say stop to your thoughts.
Mhm.
Like, oh, if I stop thinking, I'm going to stop existing. True. I mean, experience that, and a lot of people do. Stop existing. Okay, great. Well, okay, really? Let's talk about that.
Yeah. I love how you share about manifesting, and really it's not about our capacity to, create all this abundance, but it's really about removing all the blocks that stand in our way of recognizing all the abundance that is there for us.
David Hawkins is a really good teacher for me in that way, in terms of him saying there's nothing to do. All there is to do is to stop doing what doesn't work. Period.
Simple.
And that's so simple. Don't make things complicated. Don't try to do things you're not ready to do. Just stop doing, and you'll be amazed at what will happen when you stop doing what doesn't work. Like your life opens up in ways that are extraordinary, just because you stop doing what doesn't work. Right?
Yeah.
No
So
big.
true.
Yeah.
What have been the biggest paradigm shifts in your life?
I would say one of them is that I'm happy in my life, in terms of, I'm trying to say this in a way that makes sense. Okay, so I thought I was basically a love addict. So I was in relationship after relationship. I thought relationship was where I was going to find myself and be in my wholeness in relationship. And so one of the biggest paradigm shifts was not true. So I keep discovering that. There's a part of me that goes, yeah, but you might find somebody might. It's like, yeah, I know that. And I really love my life. Being alone right now, I do a YouTube live every Thursday. And in December, I'm going to start one called Living Alone. It's four Thursdays. But it's like, most of the time I'm really happy living alone, but with this rain and stuff, and I've got friends and we're all going through the same thing. And it's like, oh my God, there's so much responsibility living alone. But the truth is I had that responsibility even when I was married or with other partners. It wasn't different. It's just who I am. So that paradigm is a huge one of, I'm really whole without partner. And I've got 2 grown children, and my daughter and I are getting closer all the time, but not based on the attachment that I'm a mom and I'm a, this or that. It's not that. It's that she actually likes me.
That's always nice.
Oh, it's unusual, So, and it took a long time for her to like me and respect me and appreciate me, and the same, in return. But that's a huge paradigm shift as well, is that relationship with the child is not what you expect it to be. And so yeah, that took a lot to let go of all the attachments that you think, because we're trained, we're domesticated to live life this way. And it's like, yeah, it doesn't actually work to do that. I mean, maybe it will and does for some people, but my experience with my own life is you got to look at what doesn't work. The third thing I'll say in terms of paradigm shift is this thing about aging. It's like, it's a shocker because it isn't even, I wrote Aging Like a Guru about 6 years ago, I think, or 5 years ago or something. And it's like, I was pretty cocky as a 65-year-old person aging. And it's now like, whoa, what's happening here? And still realizing I am who I am inside. And again, if I wanted to take a horse adventure, another one, I could do it. But I'm currently right now in the struggle between all of the paradigm of aging versus the paradigm of wholeness and essential being, the universal eternal being. It's like, no this, no that. So it's those places that have been, I would say those are the big three for big paradigm shifts.
Yeah, those are huge paradigm shifts. And you write about triggers in the book, and we were talking prior to this is just, we're entering eclipse season and lots of different energies, happening towards, now leading towards the end of the year. Do you still get triggered? And if so, how do you view that experience?
Oh, that's a beautiful question. So triggers, I'm calling them now being ignited as opposed to triggers, because we hear triggers and it's like, oh, this is a terrible, terrible thing, right? Where if we see the trigger as an igniting of a memory, and the memory is not just of this lifetime, but it's a cellular memory of data. It's like the default mechanism on your computer. It's like, I used to go into Word and there was all the default things that would happen. And so those igniting of those memories trigger stuff. And even today, it's with, so I live on 10 acres by myself. I've got a renter who's down a little bit, but I basically have lived alone, and I live on this hill, and there's a road that gets, when it floods, it could disappear. So every year I get very scared. I get triggered because my road's going to disappear. And so with this major rain and all, I got very triggered today, ignited. And I said to myself, and I have this practice that I do, and I started it quite a while ago, where it's like, why am I going through this every single year about my driveway? Or, the quarter mile, it's a quarter-mile driveway. Why do I go through this every year? What's the worst of the worst of the worst that happened to me that is having me still in this panic for months? So that allowed me to look beyond this lifetime, because it was, I've had panics about whatever it is my whole life. And so when I started doing this practice of asking the question, and I started with myself, but I do this with my clients, is to say, what's the worst of the worst, that happened? And it doesn't matter if it's true or some past life, it's the memory of whatever, whether it's a movie or an imagination or a trigger of somebody else's ancestral stuff, doesn't matter. It comes up, something comes up. Mm-hmm. And so just today it was like, okay, I got to look at this, because I just am tired of this trauma. I better either sell my property, move to the city where I don't have a road to worry about. It's like, what's your choice here, girl? And so I just sat with myself, and some stuff showed up, like the idea of my whole like a landslide, and the whole road just completely going into abyss, and separation and loss, and huge stuff, right? And it's, how true is it? I don't know, but I know that is part of what shows up when we allow ourselves to actually be with what's being ignited. And when we can look at things that way, then we embrace the history of that, in a sense, embrace the thought, in a sense, like, what am I holding on to? neuro-linguistic programming has this. There's a lot of different processes that will address this, but this was just my way of getting to it, is to come to honor the part of me that had that experience and give her an opportunity to express that grief or that loss or that betrayal or that abyssness of life. And so in that, then there's relief. It gets kind of scary when you're doing it, but it's so real to me. Real in terms of whole being, transpersonal, all of this whole beingness, all the lifetimes that have been accumulating. And so I get ignited, and it's like, okay, somebody's got something to say to me. she's ready to let go of this one. And so I spend time with her and let her or him and let them have this experience that got ignited.
Kayla, you're funny tonight. Well, every night really, but
So if when the times I'm most depressed basically is when I'm living in the city, and number two, when I'm in relationship. So I'm not moving to the city, and I'm going to stay pretty clear about relationships. So, but thanks for asking.
Yeah.
I love that you bring that up, because, we see this so often in our own lives, and of course, working in communities of, conscious communities of these big fear patterns or grief patterns or abandonment patterns, and they don't necessarily translate to your point and sharing of today's experience and previous years. They don't translate to anything that's we recall as an experience here, but it's so real. And, and as you've also pointed out, and I think a lot of those who have gathered here today can conceptualize this pretty well, is that, each cell of our DNA is, a hologram of the totality of who we've been throughout all space-time continuum. And of course, we ignite, certain parts of that in this expression. And certainly, I feel like as you're talking, I'm kind of tapping into it, and and we take on as part of the collective assignment and collective imprints, a lot of these cataclysmic timelines of, and certainly many of them included massive, natural disasters and so forth. So to share that experience is so profound, because I think a lot of people feel like, oh, I have to go and go through this whole process and go to a past life regression person, and certainly that's fantastic, and we can do that, and sometimes we're called to do it. But to your point, it's it's just sitting in the presence of it and listening and asking for how it wants to express itself, how it wants to show up, and and how we can assist in kind of moving it along. And it can be that easy, right?
That's right. I think one of the challenges and part of the paradigm shift, Emily, that you're talking about is, and so I'm going to say this way, pretty much, the statistics say that only 10% of the population actually have mental illnesses. The rest of us are just either neurotic or we're caught in our fears and stuff like that. So for me, we all have the capacity to hang out with ourselves at a different level without making it so scary and terrible and horrible. We've been taught that we're like, you're just a bad, wrong person, as and insignificant, or, like you got nothing, go away. We've been taught that. And as opposed to going, yeah, well, let's actually look and see what's in there. Not from a scary, bad, the shadow thing, but just like, who are you in there? And getting to know ourselves and being best friends with ourselves. I think that's the main thing, what we're learning to do here on the planet, is when you love yourself, you're going to be so much better at loving other people. Mm-hmm. And if you can't love yourself, that's where the work is. Like, let's talk about what that obstacle is to, I want to love myself, but I can't. It's like, what's the obstacle? Well, you can, it doesn't matter what I say. You can hear the tone of, it's like, yeah, that's not going to work. And because that's what we do. We complain, or we go, it's my mother. It's my, like, yeah, what needs to shift so that'll go away?
Yeah, I love it. Do we want to, are there questions in the chat that we want to bring forth?
Yeah, if anyone has any questions. And while we do that, we'd love to know, Rosie, can you share a little bit more about your special offers?
Yeah, the boot camp and the things that are coming up and
Okay.
that you're sharing.
Sure. The boot camp is called Inward Bound Boot Camp for Self-Transformation. It's on YouTube. My channel is Dr. Rosie at Paradigm Shifts. And so you can just go there. The boot camp is 20 weeks, or no, let me do that again. 4 weeks, 20 videos. Each video is less than 10 minutes. It's all free. And check it out. So that's one. Every Thursday I do a live on YouTube at 3:30 Pacific time. So that's 6:30 your time. And don't know what that is in New Zealand, but it's there. But I've been doing things like I talked about narcissism this month.
Good one.
And not just in terms of they're bad, but the whole spectrum of who we are. We're all on the spectrum of narcissism. But I think it's, we keep pointing to those people when I really wanted to address, who we are in terms of all of us on the spectrum of trying to be self-important in a way that isn't in alignment with our true essential self. So that's been really fun to do. Next month, I'll be doing it on, like I think I said, on living alone. And 38 million people in the United States live alone, so we're not alone. So we'll be talking about all of those things that come up about that. So those are my offerings.
Beautiful.
So,
And what's the name of your podcast?
there's two of them. One of them is called Aging Like a Guru, who me, and the other one is called Spiritual Immersion, Taking the Plunge. And it's really, again, about the incremental elements of what it's like to be in this challenge and the dilemmas that show up when we're questioning who we are as a spiritual being or as a human being having this spiritual experience. I mean, literally, both ways. So spiritual immersion, taking the plunge, and aging like a guru. But those are those.
Awesome.
Beautiful. And perhaps we can, in the email that we sent out with these recording, we will
Link to those.
Yeah, link to those for everybody.
And I think you had my website in there too as well, the paradigmshifts.com.
Yes, love it.
There you can find all kinds of blogs and videos and stuff, fun stuff. So lots and lots of information.
Yeah, I mean,
Amazing.
so amazing the level of service that you're here sharing with humanity, and we're just really grateful for your presence here and all your gifts and inner light. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. I have to say that, every single one of us is that kind of light and kind of it has the capacity. Like I said, I just started out as this kid who just didn't want to be alone. And I just followed what I did, followed this there's no path, that Joseph Campbell says, and this is where I'm at in this moment. And I'm just grateful that I had the courage to keep listening, because I had no special gifts. I had no special teachers. I had no special anything, but just the tenacity to keep going.
Well, we're glad you're such an embodiment of courage and
humility
and presence. Yes. So thank you so much. Is there anything else, any parting words, anything that you feel that slipped by that you wanted to share before we?
I love this Kayla person. She's awesome.
She is awesome.
We love her too.
Somebody, when I was on the horse trip, said, what are your she's 62. Okay. She said, this person said, we're riding on the horses and trail riding. She says, what's your what do you say is the most important things that people need to learn? And I said, number one is have fun. And right now I can't. Oh, number two is trust yourself. self-trust, bottom line. And I think that's what we're struggling with all the time. We go, yeah, I can't trust myself. I don't know what to do. The dilemmas, the worries, the whatevers, the traumas, the triggers. I don't know what to do. I don't trust myself. So, so that's trust yourself. So have fun, trust yourself. Those are the two.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Sage wisdom. For sure. Well, we absolutely love having you here
So
and
grateful.
look forward to exploring and experiencing more of your offerings and light. And thank you.
Yeah. And
You're
thank you all so much for joining us, joining you. And we'll see you next time.
Love you guys. Bye.
Bye, guys. Thanks again.
Bye.